Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 330 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. This one is all about maintaining personality and values balance in a team. So basically we're talking about two different forms of diversity there. Now, it's an interesting topic which came to me on the weekend of all times. Let's get into it right now. Now, on the weekend, I was fortunate enough to run a workshop at a Toastmasters conference in Perth, Western Australia, which was all about authentic leadership. So as part of that workshop, we covered lots of things around personal values, understanding your personal values so you can be more authentic as a leader when you align with those values. And it was a really interesting topic. And someone at the end of the workshop came up to me and asked me the question, how do I maintain the balance of values in my team? So if I have, certain people with one set of values and other people have different values, then how do you balance that? What's the right balance? Now, this is a really interesting question. And once again, I think it leads to a tendency for us to want to have an answer to everything. So, what's the perfect values balance in a team it's impossible to answer. Because firstly, personal values are a human construct that we put on our own experience to describe what we believe in, right? So there's really a lot of ways to describe similar values. And so you're not going to be able to create an engineering solution which is going to give you some perfect specification on the values balance in a team. But the nature of the question was interesting because it implies that there is a good balance or the right balance to have. So let's talk about that. Now, having a balance of values in a team implies that you want some sort of diversity because if you have different perspectives, different personal values within a team, you can rightfully assume that you'll get some benefits from that because people will have different opinions and different views of the world, and that can help you to have more deep discussions and, come up with better solutions or work through problems in a diverse sort of way, and you have different points of view at the table. So that can be a positive thing. Now, it's interesting because a lot of organizations have values, organizational values. And we say, these are our 5 values that our organization works on. Now, there's a related article that I read about personal values and why people don't care about them at work, or organizational values, that is. And I'll point to that in the show notes. By the way, the show notes page will be thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/330. Now, organizational values are a nice pre-filter for people getting into your organization. In terms of, if you have a set of personal values or set of organizational values that you talk about and you refer to often, and you really believe that they represent what your organization stands for, then they can be a really positive tool to get people aligned with your working culture. So when you're interviewing them, you might ask them about values-based questions, and depending on their answers, you might get a sense of whether they would fit in with your workplace and align well with the way you work. So that can be a good pre-filter. That's the first thing I'll say. So if you use your organizational values as a bit of a filtering process to help you try to get a good fit with your team, then you will hopefully avoid massive issues in your team where people just have completely different worldviews and you've got incompatible beliefs going on in your team, which make it quite destructive. So organizational values can help you to do that. But in terms of values balance, right, it's going to be impossible to achieve. There is no values balance you should aim for because values are diverse and values are things, strongly held beliefs that we think are important to us. So you're going to have people with strong beliefs, from their childhood or from their upbringing, from their background, their cultural background, whatever it might be. And so trying to engineer this in a team is going to be really difficult. And the same goes for personality, I think. a lot of organizations tend to use psychometric tools, psychometric testing for recruitment. And I think this is a good way to make sure that you're getting someone who might be suited for a certain role. I know when I was a software engineer many years ago, one company gave me a test. I can't remember what test it was now, but basically they didn't want someone who was super empathetic and emotion driven because I was meant to be a software engineer. And they told me afterwards that, we tend to have people that tend to do well at this company tend to fit this sort of profile. And so that was quite interesting, right? So they were looking for an engineer profile with no emotions. And obviously I'm joking there. But it's a good way to filter for specific roles as well. But what you don't want to do is narrow that gap so much, or narrow the profile you're looking for so much, that you're basically eliminating diversity in a team and you're getting everyone who thinks the same way. Because if everyone comes at a problem the same way in your team, you're going to lack that diversity of thought and opinion, which might mean that you go down a certain path all the time, you don't challenge yourselves, and essentially in some ways I see it as playing it safe. And we all hear about leaders who hire people who are just like them. And they do that in some ways, I believe, because it keeps them safe. If someone's just like you, then you'll get along with that person and they will, resonate with your direction and they won't challenge you. So it's similar to personality and values, I think, with this diversity conversation. So the really important thing is not what are the exact values in my team? What are the exact personalities in my team? The really important thing is that everyone in the team understands the other people in the team as well as they can. Because you're not going to be able to engineer a perfect set of values or personalities in a team. So what you should instead aim for is connection within the team so that people feel connected to each other and they understand how other people in the team operate, which could be through their values or it could be through their personality, whether you use psychometric tools or whatever it might be. So what I find really useful for this is if you are choosing to use a psychometric testing tool of some kind, so you might be using the print assessment, which I quite like. You could be using the EQI2 emotional intelligence assessment, which I take as well. I had a podcast on that a couple of episodes ago. Or you could use DISC or Myers-Briggs or whatever other, leadership circle. All these sort of profiling tools, they're all fine. The main benefit of them, in my opinion, is not that it tells you exactly what your personality is like, although that is good. If you can get a tool that people generally agree with, when they get their results, they go, oh yeah, that's like me. That's helpful. But the real benefit of these tools is other people hearing about the different profiles in the team. Because when that happens, it suddenly makes sense. That's why Bob gets really annoyed when such and such and such happens. Oh, that's why Sarah really likes to talk in these one-on-one conversations rather than just discuss it over email. So all these things all these preferences and styles that people have become much more useful when people know about them. And same can be said for personal values. Oh, that's why so-and-so gets so upset when this happened because one of her key values is fairness, right? So these sort of things are really useful to do together as a team, not because you're trying to get the perfect balance of values or personalities in a team, but because what you want is people to understand each other better so that it's not a surprise when someone behaves in a certain way, and it helps other people be more tolerant with each other and look out for other people. It also builds connection, and connection is really important for that psychological safety. And I've talked about it before. Dr. Gabor Mate has a quote which I really like, which is, safety is not the absence of fear, but it's the presence of connection. So basically, the more connected people are going to be, the more connected they feel to each other in the team, the more likely they're going to speak up, share their opinions, and, bring themselves to work more fully than sitting silent and not feeling like they can contribute. So you've got to have safety in a team to be able to unlock the benefits of diversity, because otherwise you can have a lot of diverse people in a room, but if half of them aren't speaking, then you're losing the benefit that their voice brings. So the psychological safety element is really important, and building connection within a team is really important for that. And there is a related podcast episode, which I will put in the show notes page as well. The number escapes me right now, but it's about building team connection and a few simple ways you can do that. So just to answer the question again, look, there's no perfect values or personality balance in a team. Yes, if you're an engineer, you might do better if your personality is a certain way, for example, but there's no rules here. And I don't think there should be a rule on this is the perfect team distribution. What you really want is to know the balance in your team and to have people understand what other people in the team are like and how they operate, and that is a much better recipe for success. It's also easier because rather than trying to pick the perfect team, you are going to just have the team that you hire and you're going to get them to know each other better and understand how each other operates. That's a lot easier than trying to engineer your perfect team. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Do you agonize over this sort of stuff, like team diversity and getting the balance right? How do you do it? Do you use tools or anything like that? I'm interested in your thoughts, and you can share them on the show notes page, which was thoughtleader.com/podcast/330. And by the way, I do have a free journal which can be used to help you understand your values better. And you could use this for your team as well. It's a digital version of the journal, so it's a PDF. It is called the Useful Values Journal, and it's a good journal to help you understand your values and then reflect on them and refine your understanding of your values so you understand them better and better. I'll put a link to the Useful Values Journal on my show notes page. Like I said, it's free. You click on the link, it goes straight to the PDF. There's nothing you have to enter in there to get it. So check that out, download it, and use it in your team to help you understand all about your team values and what people in your team really believe in. So hopefully that's helpful. Keep up the thoughtful leadership, and I'll be back next week.